Welcome to Worldview, a podcast featuring teaching and conversations with Dr. Mike Lester that focus on helping faithful disciples develop a biblical worldview. Thanks for joining us, and here's your host, Mike Lester.
Well, hello, and welcome back to another season of Worldview with J. Michael Lester. I'm your host, Mike Lester, and I'm excited about having you join us this season as we sort of look at relational discipleship and how it relates to the concept of worldview. When I think about worldview issues, I'm amazed, perhaps you've seen this statistic, that in America, 4 to 6% of those who profess to believe in God would have a biblical worldview based on data published by Barna in 2025. 4 to 6% have a biblical worldview. And it's not for lack of trying. In our churches, we are doing all that we can to carry out the Great Commission. We have outreach events. We host conferences. We take the gospel door to door. We have program after program after program for discipleship. So are we losing the race? Will we ever make an impact with the gospel? Can the church today truly carry out the Great Commission of making disciples in every nation? That's the gist of what I'd like to talk about this season with worldview. Because the idea of worldview and the concept of discipleship, they go in with each other. And so as I think about relationship, I think about discipleship, there's a few things I just want to mention in this introductory episode. Number one, information alone will never equal transformation. I love the ministries that God has allowed me to be a part of in 30 years of ministry experience, vocational ministry experience. I have been involved as an elementary teacher, a junior high teacher. I've taught singles and vast numbers of different categories of singles. I have been in higher education for nearly 30 years. Currently, I serve as the president of Veritas Baptist College, an online Bible college training people globally for worldwide impact, for gospel impact. I help out in my local church in Connecticut, serving as on the pastoral team, helping with spiritual transformation and seeing life change. And yet I am staggered a little bit by this statistic that 4 to 6% of Americans, based on a criterion laid out by George Barna, would truly have a biblical worldview. We expect the world to have a worldly worldview. We expect the Buddhist to have a Buddhist worldview and the atheist to have an atheistic or naturalistic worldview. One would expect that those who profess the name of Christ would have a biblical or a Christian worldview, but sadly, this is not the case. And it's easy to sling the mud, so to speak, into the liberal denominations, whatever that means. And we can cast the blame at them and convince ourselves that in our circles, it would be much higher. Maybe it would be higher, but I think the numbers would still be problematic. And so I would like to just suggest as we launch this season to maybe contemplate the concept that more information isn't what is needed. Information alone will never bring about transformation. I want to say secondly, by just way of introduction this season, I'd like to bust the myth. I'd like to be one of those myth busters. I'd like to bust the myth of discipleship programs. And I say this tongue in cheek because I have helped to write and collaborate with 3 or 4 different discipleship programs, really one program in 3 or 4 different iterations as it progressed. But I've thrown a lot of effort into program development. I have been involved personally with discipling people in one-on-one or couple to couple or really, really small group settings. I believe in discipleship. But I'd like to bust the myth that what we need is another program. If you take an honest look at the New Testament, I think you have to come away with the conclusion Jesus did not have a discipleship program. Whether that be, you name it, whatever program you use at your church. And I'm not against programs, but I'm saying that the idea of program is closely related to the concept of information. Here's what I observed often. We would take someone through a 3-month program, and they would faithfully attend. On our church service was a Wednesday night. We did this Wednesday night during the service. We had a separate meeting place for discipleship training, for discipling new or orphan believers. And we would spend 3 to 4 months pouring ourselves into them, teaching the material, the curriculum, walking them through the program. And they would come seemingly hungry and soaking it in. They might have been able to pass a test at the end about some theology or history of Jesus, things along those lines. But to say they had a fully developed biblical worldview would be an understatement. When we look at the model of Jesus, he just walked with people. And so I've sort of labeled Jesus' model of discipleship relational discipleship. And this is what I'd like to discuss with our listening audience and our viewing audience over the next season. We are in a crisis. When you think about the current state of the Christian churches in America, when the percentages of Christian marriages versus non-Christian marriages and the divorce statistic are relatively the same, we've lost ground somewhere. When you sit in churches and you have Christians who don't know the definition of a biblical marriage and think that the major defining qualifier is whether or not you love someone, regardless of gender, then we're losing the battle. If in our Christian churches we can't get our mind wrapped around when life begins, then we're losing the battle for biblical worldview. And it's not necessarily we need someone to stand up this Sunday and preach, all right, let's celebrate Life Sunday. And this Sunday we're going to talk about life begins at conception. Great, I applaud that. But does that change someone's worldview? Worldview is the filter by which people view life. And if we're going to truly develop a biblical worldview, I believe it'll be in the context of relationships. So this puts the onus on those of us who would consider ourselves mature or maturing believers to invest in the life of a younger believer, not with curriculum, not with, let me just open up this book and walk you through these pages, more in the concept of, come be my apprentice, come walk with me, come, let's do life together. Discipleship is at the heart of the Great Commission. And so as I think about this season of worldview, I want to align our listeners with the heartbeat of Jesus. I'm not selling a new program. I'm not advocating a 1, 2, 3 process. I just like to explore the topic this season of relational discipleship. And if that intrigues you, then I invite you to join us this season on Worldview with J. Michael Lester as we talk about relational discipleship. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Until then, God bless you. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode of Worldview with Dr. Mike Lester. You can connect with Mike at jmichaellester.com, where you'll also find more discipleship resources. Mike also serves as the president of Veritas Baptist College, an online university dedicated to training ministry leaders virtually so that they can stay where God has called them. Learn more about Veritas at vbc.edu. This podcast is hosted by Dr. Mike Lester and produced by Luke Clayton and the team at increasecreative.co. We hope this episode has helped you grow in your journey of being a faithful disciple of Jesus. And we look forward to having you join us again right here on Worldview.